Alright, in this training video, what we're going to do is talk about invoices, creating and editing invoices. The majority of your invoices are going to be created on the device and they will flow automatically into routeman, but in some cases you will have to create an invoice in the office, and this is how you're going to do that. You're going to select your customer from the drop down up here, and in this case I'm making an invoice for this Apollo Restaurante and Steakhouse. You can see that down here this box is empty. This is where the invoices will be listed once this customer has a history of invoices. And I'm on the invoices tab to begin with. Over here on the right, I'm going to click new invoice, and you can see this form pops up. It lists the customer's name at the top. It has the sales rep, so if that matters, if you guys are tracking who is making which sales, you would choose the user that should get credit for this sale. And then it's going to default to the customer's ship address, but if you have alternate addresses, you could choose a different delivery address there if it's appropriate. Over here on this side, routeman generates a new invoice number, and in most cases your first two digits are going to represent the device number that made the invoice, and that can be helpful sometimes in tracking problems and troubleshooting and that kind of thing. But any invoices that are made on the Office software are going to start with 00, and then routeman comes up with the rest of the invoice number. If for some reason you are entering an invoice into the software that was already made and you need to override this and create a different invoice number, like let's say the driver had to use a paper pad and leave the customer a paper invoice there and you want it to match, you can actually come in here and type whatever you need to in this box. The only thing is you want to make sure that it's original. You don't want any duplicate invoice numbers in routeman. Then we have the invoice date right here, which is going to default to today, but if it were something that happened in the past, I can certainly make this invoice for something that happened this weekend, or I can even future date an invoice if I need to for some reason. These fields right here, when I'm creating an invoice on the computer software, are just going to stay showing as 0, but if you pull up an invoice that a device made, these can be helpful. It's going to list which device made the invoice and the log ID, which has to do with which trip or which day that driver was making that invoice. Okay, so I actually skipped past the purchase order number field. If for some reason I need to enter a purchase order number, I can enter it right there, and if I need to record the date that's applicable, I can do that there as well. Now my invoice is empty so far, so I will click new detail, and a detail is just a line item in the invoice. You can see that I default to a normal sale, but if for some reason I need to enter a replace, a refund, or a return, I can do that here. So we're going to say that I sold 100 of my small bags. So I will click into the product here, and I can choose whichever product that I want to. In this case, I'm going to say 7-pound bags. And so I can see the price that I'm charging. It lists that this is the all price for my 7-pound product. If this customer were getting a group price, it would tell me the group, or it would list customer specific right here if it was their own individual price. And of course, if you have any questions about pricing changes and entering customer prices, that will be in another help video. Down here, it's giving me kind of my subtotals, and you can see that I'm not charging tax in this case, but if I were, it would show the tax right there. So now at this point, my option is to either hit save and new if I have other details to add to the invoice, or I can simply hit OK. In this case, I'm going to hit Save and New, and you can see it blanks out again, and behind the scene here, you can see that I actually have a new line that I'm starting. And so let's say I'm going to actually replace some bags. It turns out that some of the bags I dropped off last time were damaged, and the customer wants me to replace those. So I'm going to enter in a quantity there, choose the product again, and then you can see that in this case, because I'm choosing a replace, it's not charging any money to the customer. And this can be useful in actually tracking the inventory and creating a paper trail that you did actually replace those bags for the customer, but I'm not charging anything. Okay, in this case, I'm going to say I'm finished now, and you can see the two different line items, and over here the normal and the replace. Going down the side, we can see that there's an option to edit the invoice. So if I realize I've made a mistake, I can edit the detail. I will want to choose which detail I'm on when I hit edit. Or if I realize, man, I really messed that up, I wasn't supposed to do that one at all, I will just hit delete detail and remove it completely. Add all par level details has to do with if I've created par levels for this customer, let's say 3 different items that this customer typically buys. If I click that button, basically I start with those par levels on the invoice, and then I'm simply adding the quantities to each of them. Down at the bottom, I can click into the Notes tab and add any kind of note I need to and hit Submit. So if you have unique things that have to do with this invoice that are really for your staff to see, that's a great place to go ahead and record those because they are not printed. If it's something that you want the customer to see, you would want to put it in the comments, which operates the same way. You click into it, and here you can see my default comments that get applied to all of my customers in my database. Of course, it's a testing database, so I can write any kind of thing on there that I want to. If I want to add something else to this, I can simply type into the box and it will add it to only this invoice. Then the customer has it printed on this particular invoice. The signature image, printed name, and signature date timestamp will fill in when these are made on the device. If for some reason this was important, you could actually have the customer sign something, take a photo of it or scan it, and then you can right click in this box and actually browse to the file and store it with this invoice for future documentation. Okay, down here at the bottom you'll see that the email invoice to field is empty. That's because I don't have an invoice email assigned to this customer. Otherwise it would automatically fill in here. Or if the driver makes this ticket and they enter the email while they're creating the invoice, it will actually be listed here as well when it comes into routeman. Here in the POD box, if the driver made this invoice and took a proof of delivery, for example, a picture of the DSD sheet, then it would display right here, very small, but you could see the image. And after creating the invoice, if you needed to come in here and attach a POD, for example, if the customer required it and the driver forgot it, you can actually right click and browse to file just like you did on the signature image. Over on this side, you can see our checkout summary right here. You can see the total amount, but then notice right here, it's filling in the paid on site amount. Now, something that causes problems sometimes is routeman is actually making an assumption. Okay, remember the terms for this customer are COD. Well, what if this customer normally will be COD because they're receiving delivery on site, and in this case they came to the warehouse and they bought from our location and they aren't making a payment today, and I'm okay with that? Well, I would need to actually click into this box and zero it out and let routeman realize that they paid 0 and the unpaid balance is 70. If they were making a payment, I would leave it on 70, and then down at the bottom I can choose what kind of payment they're making. And let's say it was check, I could enter the check number right here, or if it were credit card, I could enter the approval code. And if you're using our credit card processing program, you can actually go ahead and process the credit card during the invoice creation process if you leave this checked right here. Okay, but in this case I'm saying he didn't make any kind of payment, so I'm just going to leave it right there, and I'm going to hit save invoice. Now you'll notice the buttons over here changed, but it still looks like I'm in the invoice screen, and that's because it's giving me an option to print or view the invoice that I've just created. So if I choose this top button right here, print invoice, you can see that it brings up a printable invoice that is a 3-inch, just like the driver would have printed out on site. Okay, and I can print that way if I choose, or I can email it from this email option right here. If I close that and I go to formal print, then this now generates the same invoice, all the same information. It will have, the same signature, date, timestamp, all that kind of thing on it, but it's on a full sheet. For most companies, if you're printing in the office, this would be the one that looks the most professional to print off for your customer. You also have the option to do a packing slip. So if you're looking for an option to print the invoice with no dollar amount on it, that's your packing slip right there. And that's about it. So now I'm going to hit return because I'm done creating the invoice. And then you can see immediately when the invoice is created, the balance is due, because my terms for this customer say that the balance is due upon delivery, and so it's reflected immediately. And then my invoice is listed here in red. Red means unpaid, and so if I go down here at the bottom and click on this invoice legend, it shows the red is unpaid, but when I take payment for this invoice, it will turn gray. And then you can see the other possibilities right here in this legend. So as you service a customer, you're going to see line after line after line. I'll just move to another customer. Okay, so this customer has a history with me, and you can see that the oldest invoices are down at the bottom and they work their way up. If I needed to make some kind of edit to one of the invoices, I would choose which one and click edit, and I would go back into the edit screen and edit details and all that kind of thing. From this screen right here, I don't have to go into each individual invoice. I can actually highlight several of them, click and drag, and hit print invoices, and you can see that it brought up a file that has 5 different invoices, so 1 per page, and they are formatted just like the driver would have made. Or you can choose again the formal print or the packing slip. You can print multiple invoices. This is helpful sometimes. What it does is it lines up 4 different invoices per page, and so that can reduce paper if people are printing them out. Alright, so that's been the basics of how to create invoices in routeman and how to edit them. Hope it's been helpful. If you need more help, simply call the office and we'll be happy to help you figure out what you're trying to do with invoices.